Okay, so now we are going to start adding our information from our sources in and work through trying to explain that evidence as well. So, this step is going to show you how to add your evidence, and then in the next step, I will show you how to explain your evidence. So, when you are thinking about organizing your response, I told you that you were going to organize it like a race response. So, your claim was the R and A. That's what we started with. That's what you have in your entry already. Then you're going to have a CE. You're going to cite evidence and then you're going to explain it, and that's going to be from the book. And then you'll have your first of your other two sources, and then you'll have a CE for the second of your other two sources, and then your entry's done. So it's like one giant race response with the C and E repeated 3 times. So we are currently on this part, the CE for the book. So, when you are adding your evidence, you want to start off with a lead in. So, you want to introduce your evidence with the lead in, give context to the information by introducing it. So, you can use a signal phrase like this or a modified version of a signal phrase like this. I'm going to use the last one where it's the author's name plus a reporting verb. And then there are all these reporting verbs here to the right in this right-hand column that I can choose from. So I'm going to go ahead and add right after my claim, I'm going to add a lead-in for the book. So I'm going to mention the author's name and I'm going to have a reporting verb. So the lead in that I ended up with is Jason Reynolds points out. Now, here is where I want to put in my paraphrase. So in my notes, I paraphrase information from the book, and I'm just going to take that paraphrase that I've already done and I'm going to go ahead and move it into my journal entry. So now I have Jason Reynolds points out that I need to add the word that Aristotle's claim or climate theory claimed that high temperatures in Africa made black people lower in status and that they would turn white if they lived in a climate with lower temperatures. So now I have that in. Remember, we are going to explain how this answers the question before we move on to adding our next piece of evidence. But I'm going to go ahead and just put a placeholder there because we're going to talk about explaining in the next step. Before you can be done with adding this piece of evidence, we need to cite it so that we haven't plagiarized this information. So you're going to do this by putting your cursor before the period at the end of your paraphrase, and you're going to add a space, and then you're going to go over and you're going to find the source that we've used, in this case stamped, the book, and we're going to click Cite to insert the in-text citation. And you can see that it's telling me to replace this hashtag here with the page number that this information came from, which in my case is page 12. Now, you only have to do this for the book because the book is your only print source. So Reynolds points out, or so it says Reynolds here in my lead-in. I don't need, since it says Reynolds here in my lead-in, I don't need to repeat it in my paraphrase. So I just want to make, or in my parenthetical citation. So I just want to make sure that I am not repeating anything in my parenthetical citation that I've already given, any information that I've already given my lead in. So I'm going to go ahead and take out Reynolds because that is redundant. Now I'm all ready to move on to adding more information from my next source. Remember, I put a placeholder in for my explanation, and I'm going to go back and add that in a little bit. So again, I'm going to start by selecting a lead-in to introduce this information. And I'm going to type it right after my placeholder for my explanation of my first piece of evidence. So I decided to go with, according to the Washington Post, which is a variation of the first signal, or the first lead-in that is on the sheet, the note sheet. And now I'm going to add my paraphrased information from my notes. So here's the information that I paraphrased from that source. I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste it in. And I need to change the capital letter to a lowercase letter at the beginning of this so that that is correct. And I need to add on because I obviously missed that when I typed my notes. So whenever you're adding something, it's a good idea to read through it and make sure that it makes sense, that there are no words that you need to change the form of to keep your keep what you're writing grammatically correct. So now that I have this, I need to add my citation. So I'm going to go to the end of the paraphrase, and I'm going to add a space before the period, but after the last word. And then I'm going to find this source. And I'm going to click the Cite button. And because it is an electronic source, it's an online source, I do not need to put a page number. So I just have the author's last name here. You can see that this is different than the information I used in the lead-in, which was the title of the website that it was published on. So there's nothing to delete out of this, and this is actually necessary. If I had started with the author's last name and put that in my lead-in somewhere, I wouldn't need this. But I didn't do that because this author is not a well-known figure to my audience. So mentioning his name is not going to help to make my information that I'm giving seem credible. People have heard of the Washington Post. It's a well-known publication. So saying that this came from the Washington Post helps to add credibility or give credibility to my source more than using the author's last name. So that's why I did that. So now we're just going to add in a placeholder for our explanation. Like I said, I'll show you that in the next step. And you are going to add at least one piece of information from your third source. Now, you are more than welcome to add more information, more than one piece of information from a single source, and you might need to fully answer the question, but you're going to have at least one thing from each of your sources. And that's what I'm modeling for you. So I need to, again, put in a lead-in, and I'm going to put in the information from my last source. Okay, so I used a modified version of the last lead-in on the note sheet. It's the same lead-in that I used for our first piece of evidence, but instead of using the author's name, because this didn't have an author, I said a video from Discovery Science. And then I used a reporting verb. Video from Discovery Science adds Charles Darwin believed that his theory of natural selection could be applied to the human race, and that it would be harmful to the species if the less fit members were helped to survive. He predicted that weaker races would be wiped out of existence by the stronger ones. And then at the end of that paraphrase, right before the period, I'm going to add a space, and then I'm going to click that Cite button next to that source. And now I have put the proper citation in. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add that placeholder for my explanation, which is what we're going to do in the very next step, which you're ready to move on to.